Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Your Age is Not Your Cage with Carla Allen. And today we are talking all about homesteading, going back to kind of the traditional way of life. And today I have on my special guest and good friend Chelsea Schizas. And we are going to be talking, and she's going to be sharing about all things that she has been learning about raw milk, tallow, sourdough, bone broth, just kind of going back to the basics, because I've seen so much more of that and have heard more and more people talking about wanting to become more self-sufficient and getting acquainted with local farmers and just learning more kind of the back to the nature. And so Chelsea and I are going to dig into what she's learned, and then we are hoping to make this a type of series where I have guests on that talk about different aspects of this, and just so excited to dig deeper into this and learn more and feel like I am doing better for my family and taking care of myself and my family in the way that we're meant to do it. And I've been calling it kind of a homesteading state of mind, but basically just getting back to a traditional way of life. So I'm going to quit talking and I will let you say hello, Chelsea, to our listeners and tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chelsea Schizas. I am 31 years old. I had to think about that.
She's a baby.
I have a 7-month-old son. I'm married. I have a salon, and this is something that has just really become a part of my life since my pregnancy, and I'm just digging more into it, and Carla and I have been talking a lot about it, and so I'm really excited to share this with you guys today.
Well, and before Chelsea goes on and talks about what brought all this on, she kind of just skirted right over what she does, and that is how Chelsea and I got to know each other. But she is a very talented and gifted esthetician, and just share a little bit about that in your salon and what you've been doing with that.
Yeah, I am a lash artist. I've been doing lashes for about 10 years. Feels like yesterday, but yep, 10 years. And I have a salon in Dripping Springs, and Carla and I met through, I don't even know exactly, I think a salon I worked for previously. And so I've been doing your lashes going on 6 years now.
Yeah, long time.
So definitely something I love and am passionate about, and have always been passionate about, but yeah, not too much about lashes today.
But so Chelsea and I are good friends, and we just are always, her and I are always talking about so many different things, and just trying to learn and taking better care of ourselves and our families. And I know I'm not going to put words in Chelsea's mouth. I'll let her tell that. But I think a lot of it for you was once you did have your baby boy, and or maybe even during your pregnancy, you can share all that, but just kind of what started this path for you of wanting to learn more about getting back to the traditional ways.
Yeah, you kind of hit it on the head there. During my pregnancy, I started thinking, what you do when you have a child, you start thinking about their health and wellness and their well-being and things that benefit them and things that will negatively affect them. And so not something I ever really cared too much about when it was just me taking care of myself. And so I really started to dig deep in, a more holistic approach to life. What's in my food, what's in what I'm drinking, what's in my air, what's in my medicine, and all those things that you put in your body on a daily basis, and how those things will affect him and his health and well-being. And so that was really my inspiration for it. Being pregnant, I really started drinking raw milk during my pregnancy, actually. I found a lady who had lived nearby where I was previously living during that pregnancy, and she had her own Jersey cows, and so I would just go pick up a gallon of raw milk from her weekly and loved the way it tasted. It was so different than the store-bought milk that you drink on a normal basis, or maybe some people don't, but very, very different than what you're used to buying at the store. And so that just kind of led me down the path of learning more, like what's in my bread, what's in the lunch meat, what's in my, grains, what's in my vegetables. And I even started growing my own food at that same time. A lot of fruits and vegetables during that last summer.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And for me, as far as milk, I grew up drinking milk, regular milk from the store, and we had it. It was every night at dinner we had milk, and I got where I then could not stand the taste of milk, but also I just didn't feel good when I drank milk, and it upset my stomach. And also affected later in life my joints. I really noticed it. I don't know if I noticed it as much when I was younger. But so tell me some of the things, like I bet some people that would hear that you're pregnant and we're drinking raw milk, we're like, oh my gosh, what are you thinking?
Right.
Because I think people have such a misconception. And I would say I probably did too until I really started learning a misconception about the safety of raw milk. So tell me what you've learned on raw milk and, where that's taken you.
I truly believe that the milk that we get from the store, the reason why they started pasteurizing milk is because they were these large dairy farms with hundreds and hundreds of cows in confined spaces that didn't have grass to walk out on, to eat. They were eating a grain diet. And so when you have an unhealthy cow producing milk, it's going to have a lot more bacteria. If they're just strictly there for the purpose of making milk, they're not free to roam. They've got more sores on their body, and so you've got this bacteria and these negative things that are then entering the milk, and so they have to pasteurize that milk because the risk and the liability is there on them to make sure that people aren't getting sick. So personally, when you find a local farmer that has their, a couple dairy cows, and they do it because they just want their access to that milk. They're making 3 gallons a day per cow. They've got 4, not one family can consume all of that milk. So of course you'd gift it to your friends, you give it to your local community. And so I don't see the danger or the risk so much in that raw milk. I know the lady I get my raw milk from. I've met her cow. She's got 1 cow.
I met that cow too.
Yes, and she's a sweet cow. She looks like Lucille Ball.
Yeah.
And so I've seen her setup. It's clean. She's very, very thorough with how she she doesn't process it, but how she obtains the milk from her cow. And so I just am not worried about that personally. Yeah. I'm more worried about the nutrient destruction that's in the store-bought milk than I would be from the raw milk that I'd be getting from her.
Well, and as you say that, I have a little booklet here, and Chelsea and I both are very hooked on Wise Traditions podcast. And just their whole method,
the whole foundation,
everything about them. And her and I, like I said, when we find something, boy, we we get on it and we dig deep and we join everything and order everything.
My husband said the other day, he's like, "Where'd you hear that, Carla?" And I'm like, "No, I learned it myself. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, so we are kind of funny about that, but it's the Weston A. Price Foundation, and I joined the Austin chapter, but they sent a book. It's such good timing. Mm-hmm. And so as you're talking about this raw milk, one of the things that they were saying is that the conditions that the cows, back when they said that raw milk was causing all these illnesses, that it was back in the day where it was just cesspools of manure and grime. It said crowded housing, without running water and refrigeration and sanitation, and everything was blamed on the raw milk instead of the unsanitary conditions, and the filth that these cows were living in, and just the way that they were being raised. And I think that makes such a difference, and I love that they talk about that.
And just so you know, I didn't even read that or know that. This is just my understanding from, I guess, a common sense aspect. Like, they're pasteurizing it because this is a danger, quote unquote, to people. But really, think of the environment that these large scale dairies have. It's no comparison.
Yeah, and it's like, well, why not, instead of why not make the conditions better? instead of pasteurizing, why not make the conditions better that they're living in for the cows? And okay, so what else on raw milk? What else did you want to share on that?
I have a lot on raw milk. I feel like this is one of the things that I love the most. My husband is actually lactose intolerant, and from the day I met him, this guy loves his ice cream. And so, sorry to put you on blast, honey, but it was pretty rough after he'd eat some ice cream for him. And so when we got that raw milk, I mean, he loves his, cereal, and he loves his ice cream. I've been able to make him homemade ice cream, and it does not hurt his stomach at all. One of my favorite facts about raw milk is that it has the casein protein, the A2 casein protein, which a lot of people who have lactose intolerance can actually digest it a lot better. And it is the same casein protein that is predominantly carried in human breast milk. So it's very similar to human breast milk.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Wow.
And so it's just so healthy for us to drink. It's got so much nutrients in it, detoxifies. It's rich in calcium for your bone health, especially as we age as men and women. Bone health is so important. It's rich in vitamin D and A and E and K, which is so good for our blood, our vision, and just our cells in general. And so when you go through the process of pasteurization, all of those nutrients become destroyed. They do not exist anymore in that milk. And so what are you drinking it for? Like, what is the actual benefit you're getting from that?
Yeah.
It's just not there anymore. And so the purpose of why you are consuming an animal fat like that is been completely removed. And it's so good for our health and our wellness.
Well, and while you're talking about that, in the heating and what they do for the pasteurization, and most milk in your stores is ultra pasteurized. And that means they take it to 280 degrees Fahrenheit.
Scalding.
And it says and that's boiling is 212 degrees. So ultra pasteurization takes it to 280. And there's 4 different techniques, but it says it causes oxidative damage to the milk proteins, which results in various degrees of redox state imbalance and oxidative damage in plasma, liver, and brain tissues. I mean, just like what is left of that milk when you take it to such a high degree of heat, it's going to break down all of it.
And you're changing it from its natural state. Like, there is a purpose for those nutrients in that milk, right?
Yeah.
And now you've changed that purpose through this pasteurization. So what then are you left with, and what is that doing to your body? If those nutrients have been removed, it totally changes like the chemical makeup of it.
Right.
And so is there a negative effect on drinking that milk now? I don't personally know. But
well, and even from these studies in here, and I mean, they have everything in here backed up with all the
resources.
Sites,
yeah,
exactly. And how people that switched from the pasteurized milk and went to raw milk see less asthma and respiratory infections, fewer allergies, eczema, rashes. And it even talks about the fact of things like osteoporosis. I always have a hard time with that word.
Osteoporosis.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
How when they started drinking the raw milk, that their bone density tests improved.
Wow.
And that a lot of people can enjoy raw milk but can't tolerate the pasteurized milk. And I mean, the raw milk, and I know you've probably looked up a lot of the benefits too, but I mean, even just all of that, but also it really is true in the fact of building stronger bones and stronger teeth, and I mean, even brain
straighter
health.
teeth. They've even done studies. Weston A. Price, the man who created the foundation that is the podcast we listen to, Wise Traditions. Got to plug them for all this information. They're so great.
I will put them in our show notes.
The doctor, or he was a dentist, and he went around studying all these different tribal communities and how their health and wellness was, and even so much so as their teeth had changed from their original traditional diet when they started eating a more processed diet, a more Americanized diet. How their teeth were very crooked and unstraight, and their palates were formed differently because of the processing that you go through when you start eating a more civilized diet than just your traditional diet. And so he started looking more into that. I mean, that's really the basis of where this foundation kind of comes from.
Yeah, and they do have a website website that you can go to and find all this information and so much more. And Chelsea and I have no affiliation with them.
No, we just love them.
Yes,
we love you guys if you ever hear this.
we do, and they have realmilk.com. Real milk. Why am I having trouble with that word too?
Realmilk.com.
Thank you. And they on there also list over 3,000 places you can get raw milk in the United States, because it's a huge demand now.
Yeah.
And people are learning more and more about it. And it talks about right here about the truth is pasteurization lets the industry get away with raising cows in filthy, crowded conditions, but it doesn't make milk any safer, and it ruins nature's perfect food. It says we have the technology to produce clean, raw milk, stainless steel, rapid cooling, on-farm testing, an efficient nationwide cold chain, and get it to every growing child in the country.
Yes, it's so good for the development of children.
Yeah.
Especially with the bones and the teeth. One thing that I would recommend to your listeners is finding a herd share in their local community. A herd share is an agreement that a consumer pays a farmer a fee for boarding a cow there. So essentially, you own a share of that cow. Just like an arrangement of owning a share in a racehorse. And so you're paying for the care of the animal and the milking of the cow, and then you being the herd share owner then obtains the milk. You do not purchase it per se, but you obtain it. And so for my lady, I pay a jar deposit for my jar, and then I go and pick up my milk on a weekly basis, but I pay her a herd share. So essentially it goes to feeding her cow and taking care of her cow and the work she puts in to milk her cow.
And I didn't know anything about this. I remember you told me you have to get a herd share. I'm like, what is it? Well, what do I do? What is that?
Yeah.
And it all seems overwhelming, but it's really not. And if you, you definitely want to look for good, reputable,
dairy owners.
Yeah. And go visit their places where they have them. I think it's good to see where you're getting the milk from, and most should be open to you coming out and seeing. But when I started learning more and more on the herd share, so let me ask you, have you found any info? What if they don't have a herd share? Does that matter?
I have an idea. It does, because there's legalities that would there's liabilities, right? The government does not want somebody giving away milk because there are laws in place for pasteurization of milk. So that's why the herd share exists.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a loophole, essentially, for
Right.
them to be able to give you this nutrient-dense milk.
Because I've noticed that I haven't found it on their website where you have to get a herd share. Like you can just pre-order the
herd
milk.
share. Yeah.
So
and so that's them essentially having a contract with you that you're buying a share of their cow.
Yeah.
And you're paying for the care of that animal.
Yeah.
So that's what the herd share is. If you are looking for someone, like if you go to realmilk.com and you don't find anybody like local to you and you're trying to find raw milk, the best advice that I could give to you would be to seek out your local farmers markets. There's a ton around, most major cities. We've got at least like 8 or 9 in just the Austin area alone. But seek out your local farmers market. Go to those grass-fed beef, vendors. Go to those pork vendors and ask them, do you know anybody that has raw milk? I'm really interested in finding this raw milk. And generally, they know each other.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, I've even found that there are several of them that may have poultry and beef and raw milk. And depending how big that local farmer is,
right.
A lot of them do have several of the options versus just one thing.
Right.
But yeah, on the farmers markets, that is something that I've definitely have dug into. And again, where Chelsea shared a whole notes section where we've mapped out every farmer's market in and around Austin, Texas.
Yes.
But it's been so fun to go to different ones and meet the different people and see who's growing what and where, and just talking to them. How much more fun is that than just going to the grocery store and grabbing that chicken out of the case?
I have not really grocery shopped in months because I've really made it a priority to know who I'm sourcing my food from. You know, are you doing organic practices? Is your beef, you know, grass-fed and grass-finished? Is it grass-fed, grain-finished? Are you completely feeding them grain? You know, is that grain sprayed with pesticides? These are just things that, you know, I never ever thought about before. I just was like, beef, you know, that's the ground beef, here we go. And so really looking into, because these things just negatively affect our health so much in so many ways. I mean, that we are the sickest we've ever been in our country, and it's because of our food, and it's because of our air and our water. And I want to strive for progress, not do perfection, but these things are just important, and I want to know who's making my food and where it's coming from.
Well, and if you go to the grocery store, and I was able to do this, I had some chicken I had already bought at home, and I buy the quote unquote good chicken at the store, organic and all that. And when I compared that to the chicken that I got at the farmer's market, it was unbelievable, the difference in the color, texture, everything.
Appearance.
And definitely the taste. The one from the farmer's market, the local, was so good. And I don't see me going to the store and buying regular chicken anymore. And especially once you do know how they're growing it. And it is important to ask, the thing that you pointed out, it is important to ask them, because it's not such a bad thing if they are finishing with some grain, like with their chicken or their beef or whatever. It's just a matter of, okay, if you're finishing with that, where are you getting it? Is that organic grain? What's in it?
Right.
Does it have corn or soy or GMOs or any of that?
Right.
And also the grass, when everywhere they say grass fed, well, what are you putting on your grass?
Right.
Are you spraying it with pesticides?
Right.
Or, what
Is
grass
it a native grown grass?
Exactly.
Is it being shipped in?
Yeah.
Are you getting it from somewhere? Like, where's that? These things you would never think of, but they affect the diet and the health of the animal so much. And it's like we're eating sick animals when we shop at the grocery store. We're eating animals who are sick. Just think about that.
And I think, marketing is really good, and anyone can market a grass-fed, grass-finished product. And I learned a lot of this too from my husband. If you're not asking the right questions, and if you're not asking about that grass, we know in Texas, we've been in a drought.
Yeah.
You can't say you're only feeding grass, because how?
Yeah.
When no one has any grass right now.
Right.
And so I think that's why it's important to ask the questions and do your own research and become knowledgeable in it, versus just going off what you might have heard is good. And I always say it in everything on being your own health advocate, is
Absolutely.
really digging in and learning for yourself. And I think that's where Chelsea and I both nerd out, because I've got this book in front of me with all my highlights. And
Well, I think what scares a lot of people is the price, right? You feel like you're going to spend more money on this beef, on this pork, on this milk than you would pay at the grocery store. And there's a reason. It's your health. And if you think about it in the long term, if what you're eating is going to make you sick long term, you're going to pay that money anyways on your health care.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of people don't think about, well, if I'm paying a little more here, but yet it's keeping me from those doctor's offices, it's keeping me from putting so many toxins and chemicals in my body, then, why wouldn't I rather do it on this side? And like I said, and maybe I'm just a nerd, but I have found it fun and fascinating, and I love learning and
meeting them.
Yes,
meeting these people.
meeting the
They're
people,
so friendly,
chatting, and there's something about it that just makes me feel good that I'm supporting someone local, and that I feel like it is, like we said, going back to a traditional way of life, and I'm not just ordering my groceries from the grocery store. And don't get me wrong, I still go to the store for some things, but for a lot of my stuff, and even some of the skincare stuff, I much rather go to these farmers markets and support them.
Yeah, 100%.
Anything else on raw milk?
No, I think we're good on raw milk.
But I highly encourage everyone, because like I said, I'm not a milk drinker, but now I do buy it, and I don't have issues with it. and I buy the yogurt made with the A2. And I'm hoping to eventually get some cottage cheese.
Yeah.
That's what I really want with the A2. But
Yeah.
I highly encourage everyone to give it a try.
Absolutely.
All right, moving forward. What's next on Chelsea's learning list?
After starting on my journey with the raw milk, I also had a friend who gifted me a sourdough starter, so I started learning more about that. And this journey has been a lot longer, harder process because I'm making this bread myself, and you gotta take care of it like it's a newborn baby, and I've had a newborn baby at the same time, so it is an experience, but I'm finally getting it down to perfection in my opinion. But
And so what has made you want to make your own bread?
so looking at ingredients, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just a label reader now, and I'm like, what's in this? If I can't pronounce it or I don't know what it is, that's concerning, right? And I don't want to put that in my body. So looking at a bread packaging, I mean, go grab yours and look right now. You're going to be like, what is this stuff?
Yeah.
What is in this? And there's only 3 ingredients in sourdough bread. It's flour, water, and salt.
Yeah.
And it's a fermented grain, so it's really good for your gut bacteria. Eating fermented foods is another traditional way of life. I mean, sourdough bread goes back to 3000 BC. Egyptians and Greeks ate it. I mean, it was something they just had access to, and you really don't need much but some, wood-burning stove to cook it, so...
So what about for people that do have issues with wheat and gluten and things like that? Because I would be one of those people, and because I've heard so many things that a lot of people can tolerate the sourdough, even if they can't tolerate regular bread.
So it does depend on what flour people are using. That is super important. If it's an enriched flour, a bleached flour, it's not good. It's not a good process to use. Unenriched, unbleached, organic, whole grain, sourdough is going to be your best bet. Making it yourself so you know what's in it is going to be your best bet too. It's super easy once you get the hang of it. It just takes a little while. But people who have gluten intolerance do have an easier time digesting it because essentially the sourdough has a lactic acid bacteria, and it breaks down the gluten during that cold fermentation. Your last phase before you bake the bread is a cold, like bulk fermentation, I guess they call it. And during that process, the little enzymes in there, the little bacteria in there eat up the gluten. So it doesn't actually have as much gluten as you would find in like a regular store-bought bread.
So I guess that's part of the fermentation process. I mean, kind of like eating fermented foods. Is that, same
like you
type
would
thing.
soak in like a fermented, like you would allow that food to create its own fermentation. The same thing with the bread. During that last fermentation, it's really eating up a lot of that gluten, so it doesn't technically have the same amount of gluten as when you first started mixing that flour into your sourdough starter in your water. Yeah.
Well, and not to mention, people that do have issues, it might not even have to do so much with the wheat or gluten, but the tons of other things that are in it. Exactly.
I mean, really.
There's so many other things that it could be, but yet maybe we just go ahead and blame it on wheat and gluten,
Well, what happens with that wheat, at least in America, is they process that wheat in a way that completely destroys the nutrients again. I mean, here we are. Destroys the nutrients. They've been spraying it with pesticides, so it's got chemicals in it. It's got poison in it. And then they go through, they process it, removes all those nutrients. So what's the positive of this product? Then they have to enrich it with vitamins. So they have to put vitamins back into that flour so that it has some sort of nutrient density to it. And that's just not the original form. I mean, we're just not eating it in its original form, and that's why it's causing so many issues for people, I think.
Anything that says enriched, you don't want to buy it. And I've learned a lot about that lately because they're adding folic acid to your products, and you do not want that folic acid in your body. It's just another poison. And so, enriched rice. If you look at rice bags, most of them will say enriched.
Yeah.
And
we never think twice about those things.
And enriched bread, cereals, cereals. I say cereal. I know Jake and Mary Grace, if they're listening, are laughing right now. But almost everyone, if you look on the boxes, if it's not an organic,
enriched wheat flour,
that is what you'll read.
probably the first ingredient.
Not to mention a million other things in it, but yeah, you don't want anything that says enriched. But
I mean,
a lot of breads say enriched.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm not ready to conquer the sourdough beast yet.
I'll make you some.
Yes, I'm just going to count on you. And
I've almost got it perfected, so now I can make 2 loaves at once. You know.
Well, you made me that rye one.
I did.
That was really good.
I had someone gift me a rye sourdough starter, which I was like, "Whoa, this is so cool!" But I haven't even gotten regular town yet, so I do actually need to feed the rye sourdough starter.
But
tonight.
I do love that you're doing that, and I do think it's another way, and it seems to be a craze with a lot of people doing it. I'm seeing so many more classes on it, and people doing things to make their own sourdough. So I don't think we're the only ones jumping on this bandwagon.
Oh, no, it's everywhere. Everyone's making sourdough. I think it started during 2020 when everyone was stuck at home. Everyone started making their own sourdough. And you know, what's really cool is people are making other things now with sourdough. They're making sourdough cookies. They're making sourdough scones. They're making sourdough pizza. I mean, I made my own pizza a couple weeks ago, and it was so good.
Yeah.
But just to go into some of the health benefits of sourdough bread, I did a little research before this so that I could have this prepared. It is very high in fiber, healthy for your gut bacteria. It can help people digest more. The fermented grain-based products like sourdough have been shown to have antioxidant, antihypertensive, anti-diabetic, and digestion-resistant bacteria reducing qualities. I know that sounds crazy, but when I heard that, I was like, digestion-resistant bacteria reducing. So these people who are having gluten in I don't know if it's called sensitivities or intolerance, what type of gluten were you eating that you were having this intolerance to? Did it have these healthy portions to it? And I think that's really why people
I think that's where my wake up call has been, in a lot of it, you know, as I was saying that a minute ago. I think maybe the blame goes on the gluten, but yet, okay, turn over that whatever package of tortillas. What's in that? And when you read all that stuff, well, it's sure not going to have the benefits like what you just read.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. Love sourdough. With some grass-fed butter.
Yeah.
Whip me up. Some honey on top.
Yeah.
Oh.
Some good local honey.
That's a dessert right there.
Okay. Anything else on sourdough?
No.
All right. Next on Chelsea's learning list, what have you got for us?
Ooh, and you and I can talk a lot about this one because I made you some bone broth.
Yes. Yeah.
And we learned a lot in that process too, because I had only made it one time previous to that, and I had bought some marrow bones from a local farmer at the farmer's market, and she sold me fat and she sold me bones, which was really awesome. And she just had, you know, the clippings from her cows. And so I wanted to make my own bone broth because I'd seen so much good nutrients for infants because of the gelatinous, like collagen that comes on the top of your bone broth when you make it, like a meat stock essentially. And so my marrow bones looked so different from the ones Carla brought to me at work.
And now I know the difference too.
She brought me soup bones, which had like a small marrow bone in the center, but a lot of meat on them. And so that ended up making a less gelatinous, but still nutrient dense bone broth. And so I've just really been learning a lot about bone broth lately too.
Well, and bone broth, you know, when I used to buy it at the store, and I've learned so much since I would just go pick up. I still bought organic, but you really have to look at the ingredients there too, because a lot of them, if you look, the first ingredient's water, or there's tons of other stuff in them you don't need. And when there's
sugar.
Yeah. And sugar. And there were some I looked at, the protein content was like literally nothing. And I'm like, well, why is that? And it was like, because it had 40 other ingredients, you know, before it actually had the chicken or the beef. And so I started learning more about the importance of, if you are going to purchase it, you really need to look at the labels. And then when you're buying the really good stuff at the store, it's not cheap.
No.
And yet
It's cheap to make it at home,
it's
let
so
me tell
easy
you.
to make it. So
Yeah.
kind of tell that process.
How you make it.
Yeah.
So the bones that I bought from this lady, I mean, they're huge, like joint bones essentially,
Yeah.
with lots of marrow in them, which I then strain out that marrow at the end, and I actually feed that to my son, and he loves it, loves eating the marrow. But I use more of those joint bones because they do have so much of that dense. There's not really a lot of meat or tissue on them at all.
And before you move from that, because people are probably going, wait, what did she just say? She feeds her baby the marrow? What the heck is that?
It's cooked.
Yeah. And
marrow is, I don't even actually know.
so it's, I mean, I don't know the technical either, but like in the bone, you'll see.
It's like the blood, gelatinous blood that's in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in every, I think, animal's
I could
bones.
look it up probably, but what I guess if someone's listening and they're going, I don't understand why would you eat the marrow? Why do you feed it to Slade? Like I am assuming there's a
lot of collagen in it.
Yeah.
A lot of calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus that's in the connective tissue in the joints.
Yeah.
So it's really good for I think just like building blocks of proteins for him.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're good.
So okay, you have the bones that you're gonna.
Yes. So I personally like to source those marrow bones. And then what I'll do is I have a big stainless steel stock pot that I got at, I think, Costco or something like that. And I put the bones in there. And these bones are like $4 a pound from my farmer at the farmer's market.
And is that the only place people can get them? Like farmer's market? Can you go to a butcher or?
I haven't done that, so I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Call them and ask them. I mean,
not
it doesn't
sure
hurt. If hey, do you have any marrow bones that you guys just throw out? Love to pick them up. I mean, you can make a lot from just 3 pounds of bones.
Yeah.
You can make a lot of bone broth from it.
Again, I would think that it matters the quality though.
Absolutely.
Again.
I mean, I'm buying them from a grass-fed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Farmer at my local farmer's market. But you could ask those questions to your butcher too, and just see, what do you know about it? If they act like they don't, or they're confused, they probably aren't sourcing it the best way. Because you know when you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get that big stock pot. I put the bones in there. I cover them with water, and then I put in a little bit of apple cider vinegar, maybe just like a capful or a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and that kind of helps to pull out some of the nutrients, kind of like prime that tissue in there before you start the heating process of it. And so for 30 minutes I soak that, and then I'll chop up carrots, celery, onion, parsley. I'll put that all in there, and you really don't even have to worry about the skins on everything. Like, just put it all in there, rinds and all, or whatever. Because all those nutrients that are in like the skin of the onion too, I mean, you're going to get that in your bone broth, and it's going to get strained out at the end, so you're not going to be chewing on that stuff. So and then I really boil it for like 8 to 16 hours, and then I'll take it off. Sometimes I'll even keep adding water. If I see it's getting lower than the bones, I'll add a little bit more water each time, but boil it for 8 to 16 hours. There's not really like a set time. I think a minimum of 8 is really good. And it really just helps to pull all of those nutrients out of those bones.
Is that something you could do in a crock pot too?
Yeah, you could crock pot it.
Instant pot?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure you could find a recipe for that on Pinterest.
I would imagine. I mean, as you were saying that, I was imagining you can probably do that. Because, for me, I'd like,
set it and forget it.
Exactly. My stove works off propane, and Bubba, the propane guy, would really like that bill.
Now you got me thinking, because mine's also gas, and I did not think about that. So
if you're running it that long, I mean,
pot.
it's not a huge amount, but it just
it's very low. I mean, you turn it up to boiling, and then you set it really low.
So same kind of thing if you want to do crock pot or Instant Pot. Okay.
Yeah, you can definitely do it in your crock pot though.
Okay, so
Instant Pot I wouldn't do, but.
Then after that, what happens once you've done it for that long?
I'll let it cool, and then I'll strain it through a large strainer first into a giant bowl. Use a large strainer to get out all the carrots and all that stuff, and then I'll do it through a smaller strainer, like a you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know the word.
Small
strainer. And I give the bones to my dogs to chew on. After I take the marrow out, I give the bones to my dog, and then I will store it, and I'll let it cool, obviously, and I'll store it in a big, like a mason jar, big glass mason jar, let it sit in the fridge for a little bit until it gets to, cold temperature. And then what I really like to do, I got these silicone molds, and I'll pour it into the silicone molds, and I'll freeze them and put them in a Ziploc bag. So that way I can just pop them out and throw them in whatever recipes I'm making. And it just adds all those nutrients and, health benefits to whatever I'm cooking, whether if it calls for stock, if it calls for broth, I'll throw in some of those.
Yeah, because you had made me some, and I did. I went and got some molds, and it was funny. The only ones I could find were Easter ones. So I have little molds with little bunnies and butterflies, and it's actually pretty cute. Because I'm like, well, why not? That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But I did, and that's so easy because you just freeze it and then it's ready. Or if you just want to thaw one, and I love to just take them and put in a coffee cup and sip it. I mean,
sipping broth is what they call it.
It's just, especially like when you're sick. My mom recently was sick, and I was just like, Mom, just sip on that bone broth, and help build your immune system with all the nutrients and
Yep, because it's got that calcium, magnesium, which is so important for our bodies, and it provides our body with natural compounds from the cartilage in the bones too, like collagen. I mean, we're all about collagen right now in the world, right? Like, where are we getting collagen? If you're getting it from a powder, it's not doing you any good. Your body does not absorb that collagen. Like, we really need to get it from an animal source, like directly. And this is the best way for you to get collagen.
Yeah. And it's not hard.
It's not.
I mean, I think I've always thought it was difficult. Like, you had to go through this big process.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, well, wait, you mean you just throw that stuff in there and that's it?
Set it and forget it.
I think maybe for most people, maybe the hard for them would be, well, where do I get these bones?
Sourcing them.
So I think that's it. But if you start going to these farmers markets, you'll notice when you go to most of the booths, it'll say sold out on all the bones because people are going and getting the bones to make their own stuff.
I also have another resource for finding things like this. So if you need to figure out where your local farmers market is, there is a website called localharvest.org, and it's a really great way to seek out local farmers, and also look for CSAs. I don't know exactly what that stands for, but I know it's like a community.
It's community. I know, and I just got something in an email from one of them, but it's a community type, like you can... community sharing, I don't know.
You can go to get your fruits and vegetables, a lot of CSAs, but you can also do it for milk and meat and stuff like that.
They'll usually have those. I did it once, and I went to pick it up, and it was a big box filled with whatever veggies and fruits were in season at that time, and it was really pretty cool.
Nice.
And so you get that stuff, and then it's not like you go into the store with a certain thing in mind. You're going, okay, cool, what could I do with this cabbage and these leeks and this, and I think that's kind of fun too when you go and then you just kind of make different. It's made me go make different things because I'm picking up what's available.
Yeah, I on Sunday last week, not yesterday, I went to a local farmers market in Austin, and I got a bone-in chuck roast. And it was beautiful. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen one look like this at the grocery store. And this is the first time I bought one at the farmer's market. And so I was like, I'm going to make a pot roast. So, of course, potatoes aren't in season, so I couldn't get any potatoes there. I did end up going to the store to get some organic potatoes. But I bought carrots there, and I bought mushrooms, and I bought, I think I bought some celery, and made this in the crock pot. Like, you set it and forget it and put it on in the morning. And I don't think I've ever had a more delicious pot roast ever. It was so good, and it was really cool to think like, oh, this was grown like right in my neighborhood.
Yeah, that is what is the best part, since my husband we raise our own beef, and it's changed our world, so I could never go back. Okay, well, let's see. Is that what else on bone broth? Anything else?
I do have a little bit more health benefits for people. So cooking the collagen turns it into a gelatin. Why you'll see on the top of the broth after you make it, it'll be very jiggly and thick. You'll kind of see it separate. And that gelatin or collagen is great. It provides the body with amino acids, which are building blocks of proteins. It also contains iron, vitamins A and K, fatty acids, selenium, zinc, manganese, and can help reduce inflammation and heal the gut. So a lot of people with gut issues in our society today, It helps strengthen our bones, can help prevent arthritis, which I already have at 31 years old, while also improving sleep and weight loss for people.
So that's the jelly stuff at top. I'm sure everybody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like the meat stock gelatin.
So you take that and separate it off of the rest?
I don't. I will actually mix it back in before I freeze it. So it's kind of mixed in with that broth altogether. So each one of my little frozen molds has some in it. But you can take it off the top and eat it. I mean, or cook it in something.
Well, I was wondering, can I lather it on my face?
So you'll actually get 3 different layers. The first layer will be tallow.
Okay.
The second layer will be that gelatin collagen, and then the third layer is more of like the liquid, the water with all the flavor in it.
Yeah.
So you could do that first fat layer, that tallow layer. You could put that on your skin. Absolutely.
Well, because that first tallow layer, I took it off before I poured the broth you gave me into the molds.
Oh, nice.
And then I used it. I cooked with it and did stuff with it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I was kind of joking about on your face, but why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, that's what was skincare back in the 1800s and 1900s. Yeah. That's early 1900s.
Yeah.
Because I'm technically born in the 1900s, but kids today.
I love all that. Okay, anything else?
No, not with bone broth, but that does kind of lead us into tallow.
It does, because since we were just talking about tallow, because that's something I have been so intrigued by, and again, I knew nothing about it before.
Yeah.
And now I'm a tallow fan.
Yeah, and it's wild because we're told like, oh, oil, just cook with some oil. So you go to the store and vegetable oil, canola oil, olive oil, avocado oil. Like, what am I supposed to use? And I don't think a lot of people understand the dangers of seed oils. And I'm not saying olive oil and avocado oil are bad for you. Those are the better oils if you are going to go to the grocery store and buy an oil. But the best and the most traditional way of cooking is with fat from an animal. And whether that be tallow, which is from cows, or lard, which is from pigs. It's a great way to cook your eggs, saute your vegetables, bake with it. I mean, it's got a very high smoke point, and it's got so much nutrients in it too.
Would you rate like the grass-fed butter up there with that too?
Grass-fed butter, I love cooking with grass-fed butter too. Yeah. It just depends on what I'm making.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And there's so much that has come out on seed oils now that hopefully most people have learned about it. But I know if you're eating in restaurants or fast food, you are eating seed oils. And I've heard some really interesting things about it even more recently, and how long, because you can't always avoid them.
Right.
But how long it stays in your body. So if you go to a restaurant and you ate a full meal, vegetables, steak, everything was cooked in canola oil, it stays for weeks in your body because it doesn't know what to do. And that just really, blew my mind that even though I may only do it occasionally, what is it doing inside? And some people are probably saying, gosh, we can't avoid everything.
Right.
But it's
the best with what you have.
Exactly.
And what you know.
Exactly. And it's all the little things that add up and add up and add up and add up. And I think you had made a list of that. I thought I remembered seeing that.
Yeah, it adds up.
When you're going, but I'm only doing this or I'm only doing that. But then when you start going through your I'm only doing this and that, it keeps going on and on. Yeah. And so the oils have been a huge thing for me. And there was a time, if someone would have told me to cook with lard, I would have been going, are you insane?
Because you hear lard, and which is pig fat, and you're like, oh my God, lard, that's terrible for you. Yeah. And what always came to mind for me was Crisco, which Crisco is not lard. Yeah. Crisco is a crystallized vegetable oil. Yeah. And a vegetable oil has no vegetables in it. Vegetables are not used. It is cottonseed. They process the cotton, they had all these seeds that were left over, and this is how they started to create vegetable oil. They pressed it into an oil, and it was black. They process it like they do engine oil, essentially. Yeah. And it was black, so then they bleached it so that it wouldn't scare people, because who wants to cook with a black oil, right? Yeah. That'd be terrifying. You'd be like, this looks like sludge. What is this? Yeah. And so it's terrifying, the process that but it's cheap to make. They had it there anyways because they were processing the cotton. How can we use all this seed that we've got built up to, make a product? And if you look at ingredients in chips, If you look at ingredients in cookies, like there's sunflower, safflower, canola, vegetable. I mean, it's all in there, and it is just not good for your health.
It's all so highly processed and filled with chemicals and just the way that it is done. So when you think about the tallow and you think about the lard and grass-fed butter, I mean, that's all it is.
Well, and people get worried about like cholesterol. Oh, it's high in cholesterol. We need cholesterol. I mean, there's good cholesterol too.
Yes.
And those things, you'll see a reduction in like disease.
Yes.
In obesity, diabetes, heart issues when you're eating these healthy fats, because they're actually heart healthy.
Yeah.
Cheerios are not.
Yeah. Even though the box says they are.
They are not.
They are not. So tallow, what is the tallow?
Yeah, tallow. It is essentially the fat trimmings. I think it comes, and I'm not the best.
Chelsea and I
tallow.
we are not professionals. Chelsea
Yes.
and I are going by what we have learned. So if there's anything you have questions on, go dig deep and find out for yourself.
Yes.
But we are just sharing our excitement of what we've learned and want to pass it on to others.
Absolutely. And so tallow, I actually first heard it at the farmer's market. I saw this group there, and it was, I think they're a husband and wife. I'm not 100% sure, but they make their own tallow and loved their aesthetic of their company. It is really, really cool. And, definitely goes with like traditional, life and living. And they created this tallow, and they sell it as skincare, and they sell it as a cooking fat. And I asked her, I said, I have a ton of beef fat trimmings from a brisket that we made, and I know I want to melt it down into tallow. Can you tell me how to make it? And she was so helpful. She told me exactly what to do. Like, she wasn't gatekeeping her secrets or anything. She said, put it in a big pot by itself and just cook it until it becomes crispy. Like, until you can take those crispy pieces out and then let it cool, and it will harden, and it is the most beautiful thing. And I cook with it as fat.
So from a brisket, you had already cooked.
Yep.
Do you know how many times I could have done that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you buy a brisket, and there's a huge layer of fat on it that you got to take off, because, you're not going to eat that fat. Or, like, even steaks, you make a steak, and there's an excess piece of fat, and you cut it off, and you toss it in the trash. That is...
Wow.
Gold, liquid gold, literally, that you can cook your food in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just render it down into, just like when you're
you
cooking
say render,
bacon.
what does render mean to someone that doesn't know?
Okay, rendering is to process it essentially by cooking it down. So you're putting it as like this, slimy fat into a pot, and you're cooking it on low, letting it crackle until it becomes like an oil. Let's say, a great example, when you're making bacon. You make bacon, the fat comes off of it into a liquid grease, and then it hardens in your pan. That's the same thing. You're rendering fat. You can save your bacon grease and strain it out and keep that and cook with that lard.
Yeah, which I used to think was so gross.
Yeah.
And but great-grandmothers, they all did it. And my husband would listen to this one now going, I knew one day she'd come around on my side on something. But, he always would be like, we could cook with that.
Yep.
That bacon fat. And I'd be like, you put that in the trash.
Yeah,
That's
my
gross.
grandma used to put it in like a Folgers can, I'm pretty sure.
I know.
And I made it last night. We had Cuban chicken, and I used the lard to sear my chicken in, and then I made like a sautéed cabbage, red bell pepper, and I used tallow for that one because I didn't want that same flavor profile, because they do taste different.
Yeah.
Pork has a different taste than beef, and I think that it's more salty tasting, and so I wanted my chicken to have that flavor, but I didn't want my vegetables to have that flavor. So it's really nice because you can have multiple options for what you're trying to cook with.
Yeah, I love it. So what have you found are benefits of benefits of tallow? I know we've talked about a lot of it. Like, I bought from the same company you're talking about, and I promoted them last week in my podcast on one of my favorites.
You just gotta have them on.
Yeah, I know. Well,
we gotta hassle them.
It's in the works. But they are called the Ungovernable Project. It's another word I have trouble with. Yeah. Ungovernable Project.
Ungovernable.
And I bought some of their tallow body cream and their lip balm.
Did you see they're coming out with a new scent?
Yes, I did. I saw that. And
it's
I saw they're working on candles too.
Buy it all.
But I absolutely love it. And the way it feels on my skin too.
And your skin probably absorbs it a lot better than some of these oils that you just sit on top and you're like, why am I so greasy?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I mean, the benefits in that is my skin feels great, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not filled with it had frankincense, myrrh, the one I bought.
Okay.
Which are incredible,
Not overpowering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I know that just the main benefits of it are the fat soluble vitamins, the D, E, A, and K, which is good for blood and your cells and your bones. I mean, same thing with what you're getting from all these things, you know, your raw milk, your fat, and your bone broth. You're getting those nutrients that you can really only get from animals.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I love it. What else would you add to all of this? Is there anything that we've missed? That
I would just say, you know, you're striving for progress and not perfection. I know these things can be very overwhelming if you don't know where to start and where to look. Just start going to your local farmer's market and just see what people have and ask them questions and be curious. You don't have to change it all overnight. My husband says it best to me because I get so consumed sometimes. And I'm like, oh my God, and this, and we got to do this. And he's like, okay, this is a very big ship. And it's got to turn. A complete U-turn. It's going to take time, you know? It's going to take time, and you can't change everything overnight, but each step that you take to make your life better, make your health better is a good step in the right direction, and you're just going to keep going up and up if that's what you start doing.
I think that's such a good point because for me, I am not one that likes to really be in the kitchen a lot. I'm very simple in everything I do, and I always thought this was stuff that would just take too much time. It's not anything I'm interested in, and it's amazing that I absolutely have dug in, and I love it. And I love going to the farmer's market. And I mean, you're a big piece of that because, you know, you started doing it, and then you and I went, and then now, you know, I'm venturing
like,
off.
where other who all has a farmer's market? You get one, you get one.
I know. It's like, you know, I'm looking to see when all the different farmers markets are. And it is true. Just go to those and talk to people and learn about it. And it doesn't mean every time you have to go, you have to buy something or go and learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's been so fun about it all. And there's just something about it. I touched on it earlier. It just makes you feel better and feel like you're doing something so much more for yourself and your family and taking care of your family. And also you're supporting your communities. And I think it's so important that we support our local communities and these people that are just trying to make a good living
and I saw
provide us with good stuff.
I saw something the other day that said the average age of the American farmer is over 60 years old, and what's going to happen when they no longer can take care of their farms. You know, we live in an age of technology where people aren't really going into the field to do farming. They're not raising cattle and growing vegetables and fruits, and so I think doing your due diligence to go out there and support the ones that are so that they can make a good living, so that we know that we're getting good food, good nutrients for our body, because I don't trust anymore to not know where my food is coming from.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so, I mean, and the main reason, you know, doing this podcast today is to just help people to learn and to grow that desire in them to maybe want to dig deeper into some of the things like we have. And there's so many different areas, and that's why I said I would love to do a series and have different people come on and talk to us, but more on herbs and
fermented foods.
I mean, what all? Gardens. There's so many different things and products, skincare products, because that's another whole thing on what we're putting on our body and not realizing the amount of toxins that we're putting in on a daily basis.
Like natural herbal medicines.
Yes.
Like what has benefits to us that already grows on the earth that isn't in a pill or an injection or you know? Like how can we start treating some of these diseases that we've already had from, you know, the previous way of living, and how can we start turning that ship too?
Yeah.
Be cool. So if anybody out there knows, send them Carla's way.
I know, right? Everything is in the show notes as far as contact info. And I always say, if you know of someone, have someone that would be a good guest for any of this, please reach out to me and let me know. And we'll put as much information as we can in the show notes on the things that we've talked about so you can reference them. But you can always reach out to me. And this is a little different on Your Age is Not Your Cage podcast, but it's really not, because I'm all about taking care of ourselves, our health, becoming our own health advocates, especially as we're aging and growing older and we're taking care of families. And I think this lines up so beautifully with all of that. And so I want to end with Chelsea asking her, what does Your Age is Not Your Cage mean to you? Like what?
Well, I think personally, even though I'm only 31 years old, like I feel like I've lived a lifetime already. And so I don't think you're ever too young to be wise.
Oh, amen. Yeah. Because, you're one of the wisest friends I have. And, Chelsea's 31. I'm 59. She could be my daughter.
But the consensus of people that I spend my time with are people who are older, because I want to know what they have learned. Yeah. And I think that's where wisdom comes from. Like wisdom isn't the same thing as knowledge. Yeah. So I enjoy spending my time with people who have already walked that path. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I love that. And I think we'll end on that note. Thank you for being on with me.
Thanks for having me.
I know you guys will hear Chelsea on here again, because we always just have so much to talk about.
I know. I didn't expect that to go that long. I'm like, oh.
And there is no telling what we'll come up with next.
Yes.
So stay tuned. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Join me next week, every Wednesday, on Your Age is Not Your Cage. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.